In an earlier lesson, we learned about adding motion to our different clips. In this video tutorial, I'm going to walk through adding the motion to all of these social media posts that I did in my original video that looked like this. You see them flying in, there's a little bit of a rotation, and once they fly in, they grow, and then this last one fades in. So let's do that to our project. The first thing I'm going to do is delete this cross dissolve at the beginning. So I'm just going to delete that from all the beginning, because these aren't going to fade in, they are going to fly in. With this first one, I'm going to go right about here to where the final resting spot is going to be. And I'm going to set the position and the rotation. I'm not going to set scale. Well, I can set scale. I can set scale for now there. Then I'm going to go before just a little bit, and then we'll move our keyframes later. And I'm going to rotate to the left, -25. And then I'm going to move it all the way to the left until it's off the screen, and maybe just a little bit down by increasing this next number. And then just scan through this with the timeline and see what that looks like. Looks pretty good. I'm going to move the scale to the left to match up with these two other keyframes. So now we have these three for the position, scale, and rotation. I'm going to select all of those, move them to the left. I'm going to keep my position and rotation right there. And then over here on the right, I'm just going to increase the scale to something like 75. And then move that to the very end of this. So let's just play through this. Flies in. It's not growing as fast as I want, so I'm going to go to this keyframe, or I can just delete it, make this 80, and put this at the end.
So that's what I did. First day I got 100,000.
That's pretty good. I want to add a little bit more pop to this, so I'm going to select all of these keyframes for position and rotation. How I did that was by clicking and dragging over the position keyframes, and then shift clicking and dragging over rotation. That means we don't have to select the scale. Right clicking, changing the temporal interpolation from linear to Bezier.
So that's what I did. First day I got 100,000.
So that adds a little bit more pop to it. So let's do the next one. So after this one flies in, it's on the screen. Yep, this one should pop in right about there. So I'm going to set a keyframe for position, rotation, and scale. I'm going to put the position and the scale right about here, actually. So it's going to fly in from the right, land right about there. And that looks pretty good. Then I'm going to go to the left on the timeline. I'm going to do the rotation to the right, 25 instead of -25. Then move it to the right off screen and move it down just a bit. Now I'm going to move these two keyframes to the left for position and rotation, move the scale rotation to the left as well. And then I'm going to set a scale keyframe later on for 80 again, and move it to the right all the way. Selecting rotation, and then shift clicking and selecting position keyframes, right clicking, temporal interpolation, I'm changing it to Bezier. So now if I play through that, it's a little slow. So I'm going to make it faster by just moving these second keyframes in a little bit.
And then the next.
Something like that. May split the difference.
100,000 views. And then the next.
Alright, the last one, we're going to fly in and it's going to land on the right. So I'm just going to move the position over on the right. I'm going to set keyframes for position, scale, rotation. Move back on the timeline just a bit. Rotate it -25 degrees. And then move it off the frame and down just a bit. And then the same thing, we're going to move the scale, the position, and the rotation all the way to the left. Then I'm going to set another scale keyframe for maybe about 68 for this one, all the way to the right. Then I'm going to select my rotation and my position keyframes, right click them, change it to Bezier. So now let's watch through this.
So that's what I did. First
Zooms
day,
on,
2,000 views.
zooms on,
The next day I got a
zooms on. And that last one is a lot faster than the other one, so I'm going to make it a little bit slower, just selecting these second two keyframes and
I got a million.
make it a little bit slower. And then this last one is just going to fade on and zoom in. So we can either fade with a cross dissolve, or why not an opacity animation. So I'm going to set my opacity animation about half a second or so in at 100. I'm going to go back in time, change it to 0. So now it fades in. Then let's add that scale animation. So let's go on the timeline to where I can see it. Let's zoom in just a bit. So it's going to come in just a bit zoomed in already. Set a keyframe, move that scale all the way to the left, and zoom in. I might also need to pan up while I'm zooming in, so I'm just going to set a keyframe, move it all to the way to the left, so that matches that first keyframe, and now move up just a bit with the position, and now move these position and the scale keyframes over to the right. So it fades in, and it zooms in.
Biggest thing to me.
It's a little bit dramatic, so I'm just going to delete that scale, which was 77, and I'm going to set it at like 72. Move that to the end again. So now let's just watch through it.
First day I got 100,000.
Zooms in, zooms in, zooms in. They're all growing, and then this last one grows in too.
Biggest thing to me was love.
We could play around with this, tweak this. I might make this a little bit slower still, maybe make it a little bit bigger. One cool way that you can reposition objects after you've added position keyframes, because I noticed that it zooms in, but it's a little bit too low. I want it to be a little bit higher. We can use the anchor point. The anchor point allows us to move around our objects in a different function than the position without affecting the keyframes of the position. So if we put it there, or like go crazy with it, we can put it over here just so you can see what's happening. Zooms in over there on the left, but obviously we want it in the middle.
Viral, so that's what I did. First day I got 100,000 views. And then the next day.
And then they all fade out. I might stagger this fade out, so I might have the first one fade out, then the second one fade out, then the third one fade out, and then the last one fade out, and have the white just fade out just a hair after the rest of them.
Encouragement was just insane. The biggest
They all fade out one at a time. Looks pretty good.
wasn't
Okay, so that's how I added that effect to those social media posts. Go ahead and do something like that for your own video if you haven't done so already, and we'll see you in another lesson.